So we gotta implement all this. Wonder if you can fragment code like data on a drive, and maybe the processor does that anyways. Yeah, kind of how modern processors work is they do a bunch of parallel execution on stuff. So it actually will try to execute a whole bunch of, the next instructions at the same time and all that sort of stuff. That's actually how what was it, what was that bug that came out recently with Intel chips? But basically, it was like an optimistic execution of code with memory fetch in order to read privileged memory. But it basically took advantage of how modern processors execute stuff optimistically in order to actually read memory that's not supposed to, by taking advantage of how the processor works. So modern processors are not just faster, they're more efficient by executing more instructions. So it's pretty cool how all that works. Kind of like how some of the tricks on, I think, the PlayStation 3 that a lot of people did was if you have, because what kills processors is like the if statement kills stuff, because basically the processor has to halt on this. And you're basically running on architecture from 1995 if it's a branch statement. So what it'll do with a processor, if you have like a condition like if has like golden armor, else if has silver armor, else if has bronze armor, and you'd do something like return 5 for like your hit points, or 4 and 3 or whatever. You got some like calculation there, and maybe these things have to go off and like do a complex math thing with armor type, and whatever, somebody threw a poison thing at you and silver armor has different shit and you have buffs on it or whatever the fuck. Basically the processor will actually go back, it'll execute every branch of this, it'll execute all this code, and what it'll do is at the end of executing all this, because it can do all of it in parallel, it's all the same, so it'll execute all of it and then it'll do the actual branch command by just then multiplying like result 1 by your branch command. So basically it'll like return result 1 times 0 plus like result 2 times 0, plus like result 3 times 1, which is like the branch condition evaluates and does that sort of stuff. So like your modern processor might do something like that. And some people go off the deep end trying to like get the processor to do that stuff more often, and most of the time it's a waste of time because it's too complicated. There are too many gotchas, unless you're making a crypto mining rig for a very specific version of a very specific chipset. None of that really matters too much. All right, let's get back to doing things. So if result context equals null, all right, we'll go ahead and do our result context stuff. If stat names, so if result names is going to be null, then we're going to have to fetch stuff for that, aren't we? We need a list of common results. I think we might want to just say no on the result names and just be like, if you don't specify result names, you have a bad message. So why don't we just do that? So if result names is null, then we're just going to say, like, you must include result names. So what that basically says is, if I'm calling this from the client, I'm going to have to specify result names, which means that I have to say, like, give me mission 1 through 10, all the high score result tables for that. I think that's reasonable. I think I'll have all the information on the client. I think the UI will be asking for it, and that's how we'll do that. So we are going to call this get result leaderboard. So what was I doing? I should just copy this stuff. And it's fine to be distracting. Like, if I wasn't trying to be distracted, I just wouldn't be streaming. Which I have definitely done in the past on these things. So. All right, so we need to, that should have everything cached. We should have everything working. That's excellent. So we should finish off our 2 calls here that we've got. So there is the idea that we need to fetch ourself, and we need to fetch the other thing. So we're basically going to do okay, so what we want to do is if self does not equal null and request.include self, then what we want to do is we want to find the stat value for ourself, and let's see if we can. Let's see. So we're going to have to do a little bit of work here. We're going to have to go through our board here Alright, so I want actually an array list of string, which will be extra users. Alright, so wasn't there a character named Striker? I mean, that sounds like an American Gladiator's name. Laser, Striker. Striker with a Y. Okay, so basically we're going to say if request dot extra, let's see, include. Alright, so if this is null and request dot include self, then what we're going to do is we're going to get our self here. So self is this. So if self does not equal null, if request dot include self. Self does not equal null, then what we want to do is if request dot include users equals null, okay, so do that. There's a Wolverino too. Dark Mode Master Race 1980. Yeah. Okay, so basically I've got this extra users array, which is going to be like I want the results for mission 5, but I want the top 10, but I also want my friends. So here's like, a list of 10 people that I also want to fetch. So I can see how I rank against, people I play with. So we have this request.include users. So what we want to do here is we want to, I think we want something like a hash set of strings, which is required users. What would be the best way to do this? C++, it's get, in Java, it's fetch? I'm not sure what you mean. But one thing I wish Java had, I want goto. If the language had just goto, God, it would be, it's almost enough for me to just like switch over to C#. I just need my goto, man. When you say fetch, it's like get in blueprints. I mean, It's the same thing. You're just getting a variable. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know anything. So I've got this array of users that I want to fetch for every one of these. I'm just thinking about what's the best way for me to kind of mark them off and only go fetch the users I need. So basically, I need to iterate over every stat, right? And basically, I don't want to iterate over them too many times, but usually what I would do for something like this is make like a hash set and then just remove from the hash set. But the thing is, I have to make like a whole bunch of hash sets for this. Don't do this to me, please. Well, the reason to have goto for Java is for fibers. So, like, goto has its uses, and so if you have like, you know, an actual like stack data and you have goto, so basically you could go, you know, load stack data for a specific thing, you can like halt your instructions and go do something else. So like if you have a single thread for all execution, what you can do is you can hold these virtual stack and memory address things in memory. So you've got like a stack and a memory address for all these jobs that you have. And let's say you're talking to an external database. So like your kind of your main program is this single thread, and what it does is it's got like a list of jobs that are running that can be run. And so it would say, okay, well, I've got a job I can run. Okay, cool. So it'll load that stack and go to that memory address and start executing, and that thing would like get to an external call, like a database call or something that's going to take maybe 2 seconds. What that thing would do is it would say, okay, cool, this job is finished, I'm going to yield. And what it would say is, save my stack currently, and the memory address is, you know, this right where I am, you know, the next address lower. And so if you save the stack and the memory address, and then it would say, go make this new job, which is, you know, this like database call or whatever. And when that finishes, you know, when the resume on that is called, you know, resume right here. So you could have a single threaded program that executes all these different things concurrently. And what's really awesome about that with fibers is you no longer have to worry about this one thread accessing a whole bunch of concurrent data structures, because you've got all these stacks in memory, and you can now use single threaded data structures for everything that they touch. And it's excellent in terms of keeping a processor busy, and you can just have more fiber jobs, you know, fiber managers for each processor. It's super great. The problem that we have right now is with Java, what you have to do is have a single threaded. What's that? Yeah, it's where you only have one worker doing all the work, pretty much, as opposed to having like I would visualize threads as people in like a supermarket. Every checker that's checking out your groceries is a thread. So this would basically be like if you had. So actually, the supermarket analogy is really good. So like for every processor is like a every processor is like a check stand. So you have a checker at a check stand, right? And that person needs to check groceries out. So what happens? Well, you know, you got like some old lady there signing a check, so it fucking takes forever or something like that. Maybe the bag boy needs to go fetch something from the back room or something and help somebody out. So if you had multiple threads, you would have multiple checkers there using that same equipment to check out multiple lines of people. So if that old lady is, like writing the check or something, the other person comes in and starts, checking somebody else out with groceries while the first checker like sits there and waits for him. And all that sort of stuff. But anyway, it's a bunch of shit. Anyway, if we had GoTo, we could do fibers in Java nicely. But we can't. So right now, basically what we got is you have to have like one thread per request for your execution. So, but threads have like a lot of memory requirements, so it's a mess. And also concurrency with threads and theoretically it's possible to do fibers with Java. There's some bytecode weaving stuff, but it like totally fucks up some of your debugging, so I don't like it. Alright, so users, let's add all of our Python only lets you have one thread. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of like concurrency stuff you can do with Python and all that sort of stuff. Aren't there? There's like workers and stuff. I know my friend John who works at Facebook. He's actually given like a talk at PyCon in the near future about how to do like a whole bunch of concurrency with how they do their stuff at Facebook with Python. So I think there's some stuff there. I'm not very familiar with it, but I think you're launching a dirty smear campaign against this. All right, so basically for every stat, so let's say if users dot size, so just like a empty is empty. Let's just break. So we'll do users dot remove stat dot account ID. Okay, now we need to fetch the data for specific things, for specific users. So what sort of request is this going to look like? So this is going to be a so we're going to need this. So this is user stats, so stats. Stat context, all right, so this will be so we need to get for this stat context. So So we have the context, we've got the interval ID. Now we just have user, we just have account ID. We also need the stat name. Yeah, I don't know, a lot of people like to use Python for stuff, but I just find projects that use Python just get fucking disorganized as all hell. It's nothing's worse than opening up a whole big ass tool chain and all of it's written in Python and it's just a whole bunch of trash. You end up just rewriting the whole damn thing from scratch most of the time. Alright, so this will build our query for this stuff. So it's basically grab all the users for this interval and all this stuff, all of our friends and all of us. And all that. Can you run more threads in Python if you start them in C++? I don't think so. I don't know. I doubt it. I think that'll probably be memory based more than anything else. Now, see, what you should do is you should run a Python application which runs an embedded JVM, which runs a virtual machine inside of which you run C++. That's how you get the most threads. Yeah, like there's the only reason to like use some other program to boot up something else is like is if like you have a whole bunch of code for something that is written in another language on purpose, such as like you're writing a Lua scripting system and you have C++ boot up Lua, but you would never have like, you know, that scripting system boot up something lower. Like I would expect C++ to run Python inside of it for some reason, as opposed to Python and then C++. This is user stat history prepared. All right, so So we're going to do the interval ID first. In the context, then the name. And then we're going to do for every user here. For our prepared statement. Let's return an error. Shouldn't tell me how I can't use my threads. I think it starts off people writing high-level languages, finding out they need performance, and then embedding C++ to get that. Well, yeah, that could make sense. You're not wrong. You're forced to use Python because of Blender, but in the library you're using C++, and you don't want to write a bunch of Python anyway, so you're embedding C++. Yeah, that's another thing. To hell with it. This thing doesn't do what I want. This thing doesn't run JavaScript. What do you mean? Well, we'll just embed an engine and run JavaScript on it, because fuck you. It's like at Amazon, one of the guys, his task was to integrate Lumberyard with Twitch, Twitch chat. And this one person was not super experienced with the ways of networking and what to do. So he was tasked with doing this. So what he did, his plan was for Lumberyard, C++ application, it's supposed to be for like game engines and everything else, right? It's like Unreal 4. His plan was to embed the JVM into Lumberyard and run a Java process which already existed to proxy like chat into Twitch chat back into C++. And it was just like, oh my god, like you want to ship like an embedded JVM on an engine that's supposed to run on an Xbox? Or it's just like, are you for real? Like I was just starting to explain to him how stuff worked, and then I just stopped and like he had asked me and this other guy for help, and we're just like, well, you need to write a real networking layer in C++ for this. And he's like, well, I don't know networking stuff. And I'm just like, well, eventually we're just like, well, shit, dude, we can't help you. Sorry. Because it was just like, you're the wrong guy for this fucking job, buddy. Just like, somebody made a big mistake when they assigned this to you. So like, I think it never got done because it's just like, fuck. This guy was just put out to lunch by his superiors, pretty much. No, hell no, of course not. Like it's an awful plan. Like, let's make this super, supposedly efficient thing here, and let's put the JVM in it. That's really gonna help you out. I mean, That's a good point. I didn't actually use this thing. I made this call for extra stats, but what I have to do is go to this, gotta go to the A board. I need to add a new stat value here, which is going to be this guy. There we go. That's better. How do people like him get jobs? Oh no, this guy was fine. This guy was, I really liked hanging out with that guy. He was just a level 1 engineer. You know, like, if you assign like a big networking task to somebody who's not a network engineer, like you can't just shit all over him and be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, he's just fresh out of college. Like, alright, so what's this result got? It's got an account ID, it's got a result stat value. Just like that. Alright, so that'll add all that up in there, and we have finished, excuse me, we have finished all of our calls. Excellent, so we are almost finished. The last thing I have to do for this whole big-ass system is when we write our results, we are writing our results into our what is this? Okay, yeah, so maybe I should look at the report stats function. Yeah, it's also ridiculous. So what we have to do is we've got this big system, but we've got this like this stats storage database here, and we've got all this stat storage here, and we've got stat history. We aren't writing into our stat history for this user. So what we need to do is we want to write their highest result into here for every user, for every interval. So the idea being that we need a system which will, for every user, populate the interval stat tables only if they are greater than. So how are we going to do that? So we know what we're inserting. We don't know if it's the highest thing. So In fact, we don't even know the value of the things we adjust yet. Oh geez, this is even worse, isn't it? Okay. So I need to think about this. What we need to do is we need to take the current value of your stats and set it for every active interval after we set it here. So we need to take what we inserted into the stats storage and we need to write it to all active intervals. So what we want to do is we want to basically do a replace into we need to do a replace into stats history, but these aren't the same things. Like, we have to actually make an object. So it's going to be count ID, stat context, interval context, interval ID, stat name, stat value. So it'll be and then we've got these other things as well after we're done with it. So we need to do that. So this interval context, so these are constant per each massive thing. Okay, so is this just like a select from, like, replace into stats history and fuck, how do we do this? I mean, is this like a temp table thing again? So I basically need to select from user stats a big group of stuff. And then we need to select these things, and then we need to populate this stuff with, like, this will be user stat table dot, account ID. So the question is, can we make this thing? So I need to call a replace into, and I need to select all this data that I just put in here and overwrite it into the history table. So how exactly do I do that? use output from select to insert into another table SQL. Select insert into select. Alright, so the insert into select statement copies data from one table and inserts it into another. Okay, so based on what I'm seeing here, the syntax is replace into stats history, and then I need to actually say the columns. So this will be like account ID and then I need to do select, and then I need the account ID from user stats, and then we do where this like account ID equals or ... And this select in here, how do we select a constant though? Like I need to inject more information. Can we just select like arbitrary trash? Like can I just like select star from and then just say like hello? No, I can't. Or no, it's just this. One row returned, which was hello. Okay, so I should be able to, instead of doing like a column like that, I should be able to actually put in the value, perhaps. Unknown hello in field list. Yeah, so it's not gonna know. Yeah, so what I should do is yeah, it's going to be something like select the account ID and then hello and then like stat context from user stats. Operand should contain one column. What? Alright, so it's just bitching at me because of... Okay, so the select actually doesn't have parentheses. That's my... That's just me being stupid. Okay, so that's how I'm going to be able to select and insert into stats history. So I need a gigantic blarg call here, which is going to be every unique key that we just made. Okay, so this is just going to have to happen. Okay, so this is going to be replace into stats hist plus select and we're going to want like the account ID, so it's going to be this I need to be specific about this. So it's going to be account ID and then stat context. So stat context is part of it. Okay, so I hit the escape key, stop it. Okay, so we stat context, then we need interval context, interval ID, so we need to go through every interval that we have that is currently active. Okay, so it goes account ID, stat context, interval context. And then interval ID. Stat name, stat value. So we're going to select all this stuff from this thing, and we want to add where on here. So we need to go through every account ID, stat context, stat name. Combination. So that's every stat, isn't it? Alright, so for every stat, alright, so it's going to be the account ID, stat context, and stat name. Hello, Jeff. Welcome back. I am doing even more. Is this just an array? Yeah, we can just do the size then. Or we could just do that. Tell it to go to hell. Get user stats. Alright, oh yeah, we need to select star from stats. Yeah, so this needs to be from. Let's spell from properly, please. Thank you. What is that called? Stats? Yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm working on kind of the last part of this high score system, which is basically when we insert our new stats into our main stats tables, we need to also populate our stat intervals that are active. So we'll populate your daily, monthly, weekly stats and all that. What is the stats US on the stat?